الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما. قال الإمام النووي رحمه الله تبارك وتعالى ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين. قال وعنه أي أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رجلا قال يا رسول الله إن لي قرابة أصلهم ويقطعونني وأرسل إليهم ويسيئون إلي وأحلم عنهم ويجهلون علي. فقال لئن كنت كما قلت فكأنما تسفهم المل ولا يزال معك من الله ظهير عليهم ما دمت على ذلك. رواه مسلم. So continuing the chapter of kindness and goodness towards one's parents and relations, this is another hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. And it's dealing with relations in general. And here he mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, a man came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, I have relations and I'm kind to them, asiluhum, I connect them, I'm kind to them, I give them, and so forth and so on. And they reciprocate in the exact opposite way. وَيَقْطَعُونَنِي, and I join with them, I try and join goodness to them, and they cut me off. They cut off all forms of goodness and reciprocation from me. And I do good to them, and they do bad to me. They're reciprocating. I positively deal with them, and they negatively reciprocate back to me. And وَأَحْلِمْ لَهُمْ, and I, exercise hilm. And those who have been attending our course in Suluk, so hilm is that special kind of patience, forbearance, which is voluntary. You're not forced, you're not forced to be patient, but you, out of your goodness, with the ability to take revenge or ability to, you're not forced or coerced, but out of good character and out of, the goodness of one's heart, you practice forbearance towards others when you don't really have to. So I exercise hilm. I'm forbearing with them, and they act totally ignorant towards me. In other words, again, they reciprocate totally negatively. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said the most amazing thing. Of course, everything he says is amazing, but this is particularly, interesting what he says. فَقَالَ رَسُولُ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, if in fact the situation or it's as though it's what you have described. If the situation is in fact what you've described, it's as though you're feeding them hot sand. What does he mean by that? So this is an Arabic expression meaning, so, you are being kind to them, but they are reciprocating in negativity. So your kindness to them is on the one hand, it's more aggravating them, making them even more, they would actually, it takes two to fight, right? So people generally, when they act negatively to people, they would expect them to act negatively back, and then they would, further exasperate the situation. But you're not doing that. They're acting, negatively, and you're acting positively. So on the one hand, that's further enraging them. On the other hand, also, you're being kind to them, and they're treating you nasty, in a nasty fashion. So it's though in that transaction, in that interaction and transaction, they are bringing the adab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His anger upon them. So they're losers in every case, here and in the next world, and you are a winner in every case. So in other words, carry on, And then, of course, the Quran tells us, and it is also, prolific in the Sirah, and this happens so many instances, that when someone deals in this fashion with positivity and overlooks the negativity and doesn't respond negativity in kind, so what ultimately happens, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ أَدَاوَةٌ فَكَأَنَّمَا كأنه ولي حميم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the controller of the hearts in many cases, one who continues with that patience and forbearance, that person who had severe animosity and enmity, ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may change his heart and he ends up becoming your very close friend and associate and ally. And that's not difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do. We see Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the one who set out to kill Rasulullah, he became, his most trusted companion after Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, to the extent that Nabi says, if had there been a Nabi after me, a prophet, it would have been Umar. And so many. Abu Sufyan is another, prolific case in point, and so many others. Amr ibn al-As, one of the most amazing examples of that is Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As, who was, one of the great ambassadors, if not the most important ambassador to Quraysh in Jahiliyyah in the days of ignorance. And it was they call him Dahiyatun min Duhat al-Arab, one of the most intelligent and diplomatic and, politically, political acumen that he possessed was uncanny. So he narrates in the hadith of Sahih Muslim, he says that there was 3 stages of my life. The first stage of my life was when the Prophet ﷺ was the most hated person to me. And Islam was the most hated thing by me, and of course he was in the forefront of the antagonists. He said, and then ultimately, towards the end of the Madani period, ultimately accepted Islam, and Nabi immediately, gave him imarat and made him gave him a responsible position, being the person that he was. And in any case, so he says, and at that point, when I accepted Islam, then Nabi ﷺ became the most beloved person to me, and Islam became the most beloved thing to me. And he said, and I had so much love and reverence for the Prophet ﷺ that I could not lift my eyes to actually look in his face. Perhaps also connected with the fact that how his previous, behavior before Islam. In any case, he said to the extent that if you ask me to describe the Prophet ﷺ, I can't do that because I never really looked at him with such reverence and honor, you see. Then he says, then Prophet ﷺ left the world, and then, events took place this way and that way, and very humbly he said of himself, and I don't know now what my position is and how I'm going to leave this world. Actually, he said this at the end of his life, and in that narration he says, and he turned his back and he just began weeping profusely. So that was the companion. So the point is that if we are going to act positively, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not let to spoil the efforts and the rewards of the people who do ihsan, who do goodness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among them and raise us among them and make us in the companions of them in the hereafter. Amin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.